The conference room was small, sterile, and filled with unspoken finality. After 15 dedicated years at NovaCore, Elena Ross sat across from Lauren Pierce, the Director of Strategy, and Sandra Beck from Human Resources. Lauren's voice held a thin sheen of corporate regret as she said, "Elena, we're restructuring your position." Sandra added, "The company is heading in a new direction." Then, a beige envelope was pushed across the polished table. Severance papers. Elena didn't flinch. She had seen this moment coming, ever since an internal email landed in her inbox by accident. That email wasn't just a red flag, it was a roadmap of betrayal. A strategy memo detailed how NovaCore planned to claim full ownership of the distributed processing algorithm she had developed, without crediting her. They intended to let her go before filing any patents. But Elena had already moved ahead of them. She had refined the algorithm on her own time, using personal equipment, carefully documenting every step. The updated version, faster and more efficient by over 40%, had been patented under her name just weeks ago. With a single signature, she had granted Zenith Dynamics, NovaCore's top competitor, exclusive rights to her technology. Back in the room, Sandra explained the return process for her badge, laptop, and company phone. Lauren said her team would be notified that afternoon. Elena nodded calmly. Her team, 6 brilliant minds she had handpicked and mentored, would not be left behind. They were about to receive offers from Zenith, offers that would change their lives. "I understand completely," Elena said, her voice steady as stone. Lauren looked surprised. They had expected tears, pleading, maybe anger. But Elena's poise unsettled them. As she walked out, she passed the executive boardroom. Through the glass walls, she saw Charles Hanley, the CEO, pointing at slides on a revenue projection deck. The same Charles who, just months ago, had presented her algorithm as his own at a major tech conference, calling her one of our research staff. Elena returned to her office, locked the door, and took out her personal phone. She typed a single message. Asterisk, it's happening. My last day is Friday. Asterisk, the reply came seconds later. Asterisk, perfect. The documents are ready. Dinner tonight. Asterisk. That evening, she met Martin Grayson at a quiet upscale restaurant far from NovaCore's headquarters. In a dimly lit corner behind sliding wooden panels, they clinked glasses. Martin, the sharp-minded CEO of Zenith Dynamics, smiled. "They really did it." "They always were short-sighted," Elena replied, reviewing the final paperwork. A 7-figure signing bonus, significant equity, royalties, and most importantly, the role of Chief Innovation Officer. As she signed, her thoughts didn't linger on revenge, they focused on protection. Her career, her ideas, her team. Back at NovaCore, the halls felt colder the next day. Whispers followed Elena as she wrapped up meetings, recorded transition notes, and cleared her desk. She gave no hint of a storm she had just set in motion. But come Monday, everyone would know. Elena wasn't just leaving quietly. She was taking the future with her. Monday arrived with the kind of clear sky that promised something new. Elena Ross stepped into the black town car waiting outside her apartment at exactly 7:30 in the morning. Her tailored charcoal suit fit perfectly, sharp lines matching the resolve in her chest. Today, she would not walk into NovaCore. She would enter Zenith Dynamics as their Chief Innovation Officer. At precisely 7 a.m., the press release went live. It was a carefully worded masterpiece crafted by Zenith's legal and PR teams. It introduced Elena by name. It described her as the creator of a revolutionary distributed processing algorithm now exclusively licensed to Zenith. The release stated in bold terms that companies currently using the technology would need to negotiate new agreements with Zenith to avoid intellectual property violations. By 8:15, industry blogs had picked up the news. By 8:30, journalists were calling NovaCore's media department for comment. But the real chaos started at 9:15. Elena's phone buzzed with a text from Theo Ramirez, her lead developer at NovaCore. Asterisk, complete chaos here. What did you just do? Asterisk, Elena smiled and responded. Asterisk, check your personal email. Offers are waiting for you and the team. Asterisk. Meanwhile, 8 miles across the city, Charles Hanley was walking into a disaster. The weekly executive meeting turned into a war room. The general counsel and chief financial officer met him outside his office with panic in their eyes. They had read the release. So had the board. So had investors. Sandra Beck from HR had called in sick. Lauren Pierce refused to leave her office. Theo's messages kept coming in waves. Asterisk, they're pulling all internal files with your name on it. They're panicking. They've wheeled in every server from the research division. Charles is pacing like a madman. They still don't realize how bad this is. Asterisk, Elena didn't reply. She was too busy stepping into her new corner office, walls made of glass, light pouring in. On her desk sat a fresh bouquet and a welcome card from her new team. Martin Grayson stopped by with a coffee and a grin. We've already had 3 product inquiries and 1 licensing request, he said. TechSphere just called. They want to switch from NovaCore software. At 10:45, Elena received an email from Charles Hanley himself. No subject line. Just a short message. Asterisk, Elena, I believe there's been a misunderstanding. Please call me at your earliest convenience. Asterisk, she didn't respond. She forwarded it to Zenith's legal department instead. By noon, NovaCore stock had dropped by 7%. Zenith's rose by 12%. 3 trade journals published articles with variations of the same headline. Asterisk, the algorithm shift. How one woman changed the game. Asterisk, Elena felt no glee, only a sense of balance restoring itself. As her assistant entered to guide her to a briefing with the development team, she paused at the door. Mr. Hanley has called 4 times in the last hour, she said. Elena's voice was steady. Let him know I'm in meetings all day. Our legal team will follow up with licensing terms later this week. That afternoon, Theo texted again. Asterisk, they're trying to hold an all-hands meeting. No one's buying it. Rumors say Charles is blaming legal. Lauren's panicking. Marjorie, sorry, Lauren. Looks like she might faint. Asterisk, Elena typed back. Asterisk, focus on your offer. You'll all start next Monday, asterisk. By 3 p.m., every engineer from her old team had accepted. By 5, NovaCore had lost its algorithm, its developers, and its grip on the future. But the unraveling had just begun. Tuesday dawned quiet, but at NovaCore, the silence was suffocating. Board members had begun calling from early morning, demanding answers Charles Hanley couldn't give. The legal department was combing through every clause, every timestamp, every trace of Elena's tenure, hoping for a loophole that didn't exist. But Elena had prepared too well. Every log, every development note of the refined algorithm was time-stamped outside office hours, developed on personal equipment, and legally watertight. At Zenith Dynamics, the air was different, sharper, clearer, more alive. Elena stood in front of her newly assembled innovation team, a room filled with brains that once powered NovaCore. Theo Ramirez sat at her right, already outlining the next stage of product integration. Rachel Yu, her systems architect, was mapping out testing scenarios with 2 interns looking at her like she was a rock star. This is how it should have always been, Rachel whispered to Elena after the meeting. Not chasing approvals from people who didn't understand a line of code. Later that afternoon, Elena reviewed internal briefings with Martin Grayson. Early testing on the integrated algorithm had revealed something shocking. Performance gains exceeding even their projections, over 51% increase in efficiency. Martin leaned back, arms crossed, impressed. You didn't tell me it would be this good, he said. Elena gave a quiet smile. They never saw the last version. I stopped sharing my best work after I saw the memo about replacing me. At that moment, an urgent message from Zenith's legal counsel arrived. NovaCore had finally made contact. The email from their attorneys was cautiously worded, asking for a conversation about possible licensing agreements. Elena glanced at Martin. They'll stall. Pretend they still have leverage. Martin replied. Then we respond with precision. The reply was ready before dinner. 3 times the standard licensing fee, full public acknowledgement of Elena Ross as the sole inventor, and a 5-year exclusivity clause for future improvements. By Wednesday, the cracks in NovaCore's walls became impossible to ignore. 2 major enterprise clients contacted Zenith about switching platforms. NovaCore's support team was overwhelmed, trying to explain why response times were lagging without mentioning they no longer had access to the algorithm's architect. Employees began quietly updating LinkedIn profiles. Lauren Pierce hadn't been seen outside her office in 2 days. Sandra from HR had stopped replying to internal messages. Meanwhile, Charles Hanley scheduled a company-wide video call. According to Theo, who still had contacts inside, it was a disaster. Charles tried to appear calm, but his voice wavered. He insisted the company was in talks to resolve the situation and that NovaCore had contingency plans. But when an engineer asked whether they had actually filed the original patent, he froze. Lauren ended the call abruptly. Back at Zenith, Elena was finalizing her presentation for the upcoming TechFront conference. A keynote, the first time she would address the industry not as someone in the background, but at the center of innovation. Martin handed her the final numbers before she left for the day. NovaCore's market value has dropped 23% this week, he said. Our board is celebrating you. They called your strategy a masterclass in innovation leadership. Elena said nothing for a moment. Then she replied, softly but firmly, it was never about revenge. I just stopped letting people steal my work. That night, as she looked out the window of her apartment, city lights blinking like stars, she knew something irreversible had shifted. Not just in NovaCore, but in the entire industry. Thursday morning began with another urgent update. Theo had received word from an old contact at NovaCore an internal investigation was underway. The board had convened an emergency leadership review. Whispers of Charles Hanley's imminent removal were growing louder. Elena wasn't surprised. The executive who once smiled while erasing her name from every credit slide was now drowning in the aftermath of his own choices. Zenith's offices buzzed with energy. Elena's innovation roadmap had been greenlit. The engineering team had already begun implementing Phase 2 of her algorithm enhancements. Investors were reacting with growing confidence. Market analysts called it the quiet revolution, and Elena's name was now being cited as a model for intellectual property protection in executive seminars. That afternoon, she stepped into the main boardroom for a high-level strategy session. Martin Grayson stood at the head of a table, flanked by key department heads. First licensing request came in this morning, he said, sliding a printed email toward Elena. Not from NovaCore, of course not, but from DataPoint Solutions. They want him before the dust settles. Elena nodded. Good. We move quickly. Every day they hesitate, we gain ground. Across town, NovaCore was unraveling. Clients were calling with questions their staff couldn't answer. The legal team had exhausted every possible defense. There was no claim they could make that would survive a single court hearing. The patent belonged to Elena. Her logs were bulletproof. Her equipment was personal. Her signature was dated, filed, and verified. Charles Hanley had no defense except denial, and denial had expired. By late afternoon, Theo sent another message. Asterisk all hands meeting. Charles just stepped down. Board announced it. Lauren's gone too. Legal head replaced. Asterisk Elena looked up from her monitor, eyes narrowing. The final gatekeepers were falling. Not fired, ejected. The same people who had smiled politely while stripping her of credit had now been stripped of their titles. An hour later, a new email landed in Elena's inbox. It came from James Caldwell, the newly appointed interim CEO of NovaCore. It was short, direct, and professional. Asterisk Dr. Ross, congratulations on your new role. I've been brought in to help NovaCore stabilize its future. I would like to discuss a licensing arrangement for your patented algorithm. We are prepared to acknowledge your contribution publicly and negotiate fair terms. Would next week be possible? Asterisk. Elena forwarded the email to Martin with a note. Phase 1 complete. Martin responded within minutes. Asterisk beautifully executed. They'll pay in cash and in credibility. Asterisk. As the sun dipped over the city skyline, Elena closed her laptop. She had no sense of triumph, no need for vengeance. Only calm. The walls that once held her back were gone. What stood in their place was an open road. She had fought for her work. She had claimed her name. And now the industry was finally listening. 3 months after her departure from NovaCore, Elena Ross stood on a grand stage, spotlight pouring down like gold. Behind her, a screen displayed her name and title in clear, bold font, Chief Innovation Officer, Zenith Dynamics. Before her sat an audience of thousands, investors, engineers, reporters, and rising talents. The keynote at the National Technology Innovation Conference was hers. A year ago, she had attended the same event as a footnote, seated in the back, while Charles Hanley took credit for her work. Today, the applause was for her. As she stepped to the microphone, the room fell into silence. Elena began not with revenge, not with scorn, but with clarity. She spoke of innovation, what it meant to build something from nothing, to refine an idea that could transform an entire industry. She detailed the core architecture of her algorithm and how it would continue to evolve. She described the process of building not just code, but systems that honor the minds behind them. Without ever naming NovaCore, she made the message clear. Innovation without recognition is theft. She spoke about protecting one's work, documenting everything, and never underestimating the value of one's own brilliance. The industry, she told them, needed to stop treating creators like replaceable parts. Afterward, the reception was overwhelming. Journalists queued for interviews. Aspiring engineers approached with notebooks and nervous smiles. One young woman, barely 30, leaned in and said quietly, "Your story made me start tracking all my side projects. You made me realize I'm not just helping, I'm building. And I want my name on it." "Smart," Elena replied with a warm nod. "Always protect what you create, because no one else will do it for you." That evening, she returned to her office at Zenith. The skyline blinked in the windows as her assistant handed her a sleek white envelope. Inside was an invitation, Women in Technology's annual leadership summit. The topic, owning your intellectual value. Below the heading, her name appeared in elegant script as the keynote speaker. Moments later, Martin Grayson walked in, holding a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. "The board wanted me to tell you personally," he said with a grin. "We've officially surpassed NovaCore in market value." Elena raised her eyebrows, the corner of her lips curling into a smile. "Already?" "Today," he confirmed. "Investors say it's your leadership. Your name's become the symbol of something bigger than just tech. It's about taking back control." She accepted the glass he poured and held it up. "To recognition. To rightful credit," Martin echoed. As the clink of glass met the fading light of the evening, Elena knew this wasn't just a personal milestone. It was a turning point. One woman's quiet decision to stand her ground had redrawn the map of an entire industry. The company that once dismissed her was now forced to follow her lead. Not because of revenge, but because of results. And those no one could deny. Exactly 1 year to the day since Elena Ross was told to pack up her desk, she sat in her office at Zenith Dynamics, reviewing the quarterly innovation report. The sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows had the same glow as it did that afternoon. She walked out of NovaCore with her head high and her future folded in a cardboard box. But today, the feeling was entirely different. Back then, she had left behind silence. Now the industry echoed her name. 3 groundbreaking products built on her patented algorithm had launched within the year, dominating the data processing space and redefining performance standards across multiple sectors. Her team, once uncertain and bruised by dismissal, was now thriving under her leadership. Theo Ramirez had just filed a co-patent on a new streamlining method. Rachel Yu was heading a global implementation team. The culture was electric, driven by respect, purpose, and clarity. There was a knock at her office door. Her assistant stepped in with another envelope, this one bearing NovaCore's seal. Elena opened it without hesitation. Inside was the final copy of their licensing agreement. Signed, sealed, and printed clearly in the first paragraph were the words, "License from Dr. Elena Ross, sole inventor of the Ross distributed processing architecture, no attempts to dilute credit, no hidden clauses, just acknowledgement, long overdue." Later that afternoon, she walked into a meeting with her full team. It wasn't a typical check-in. This one marked the start of the next chapter, Phase 3 development. As she stood before them, she paused for a moment, looking at each familiar face. "What we're building next," she said, "will not only outpace what we've done, it will redefine the rules entirely. And every one of your names will be on it." After the meeting, she returned to her desk to find a simple notification on her screen. An article trending across the industry. How Elena Ross quietly reshaped the future of data technology. She clicked it open and scanned the first lines. Asterisk, she didn't raise her voice. She didn't burn it down. She built something better. And the industry followed asterisk. There was no revenge in Elena's heart, only resolve. She had never needed to destroy NovaCore. The company had done that all on its own by underestimating the very woman who had given it its edge. That evening, as city lights flickered on below, Martin Grayson entered her office again, this time without champagne, but with a look of content satisfaction. "You've changed more than just our company," he said. "You've changed how innovation is valued across the entire industry." Elena turned her chair toward the window. Her reflection, superimposed over the skyline, looked steady and certain. "I didn't want to be remembered for leaving," she said. "I wanted to be remembered for building." And she had, from obscurity to influence, from silence to center stage, Elena Ross had carved a space where brilliance could no longer be ignored. Her name was no longer hidden at the end of a report or buried under someone else's headline. It was exactly where it belonged, at the front,